Here's what you had reported. Liberation Times has uncovered details of an alleged program focused on retrieving advanced craft from beneath the sea, some reportedly non-human or unknown origin. This program draws on multiple agencies and departments.
You've heard of crash retrieval programs, but what about underwater crash retrieval programs, right? USOs, unidentified submerged objects, right? UFOs that have crashed underwater, right? Well, apparently there is a program to recover these craft under the water, and it's separate from what you might call above ground crash retrieval programs, right? And even separate from space crash retrieval programs. That's right. Apparently that exists too. On the latest episode of Weaponized with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, Christopher Sharp, who's a journalist with the Liberation Times, sat down with them and spoke about a new story that he's breaking about underwater crash retrieval programs. Let's dive in and see what this is all about. Pun intended. Now, I've got two clips for you. One with Christopher Sharp of Liberation Times talking about this underwater crash retrieval program. But also, they sat down with Matt Laszlo, who's a journalist with Askapol, right? And they spoke about the hearings coming up. So stay tuned. But our first clip is with Christopher Sharp, again, talking about this underwater, under the sea crash retrieval program to go get UFOs that have either crashed in there or maybe who knows what, right? I don't know. And don't forget, we've heard all these rumors about these beings potentially living underwater, right? So I don't know. What does that mean? What are the implications, right? Let's dive in at this first clip, and then we'll come back around and talk about it.
Here's what you had reported. Liberation Times has uncovered details of an alleged program focused on retrieving advanced craft from beneath the sea, some reportedly non-human or unknown origin. This program draws on multiple agencies and departments. Among those involved, the maritime branch of the CIA's Director of Operations, the U.S. Navy, the National Underwater Reconnaissance Office, jointly operated by Navy and CIA, U.S. Special Ops Command, and you said it's further understood Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution has provided deep submerged vehicles to support these retrieval efforts. That under the ocean, there are craft of unknown origin that have been retrieved and have been sent for analysis to secret labs, defense contractors, much as we heard about UFOs crashing and being quickly recovered. That's the basics of the story, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So, we've got collaboration from multiple agencies and offices within the US government working together. So in terms of the National Underwater Reconnaissance Office, obviously that's going to be involved with detection and tracking of crafts. And then obviously you've got Woods Hole, which will provide us submersibles, which will help you get the ship, get the crafts out of the water. But from my understanding as well, Lockheed Martin have their own kind of vehicles now that can help with that, submergence vehicles. So that was a news story I actually put out there a few days ago that U.S. Special Operations Command was working with Lockheed Martin with their new submersibles. So that's really, really interesting as well. But yeah, what happens is the CIA do have a maritime branch within the operations directorate. And, from my understanding, they do work with U.S. Operational Command, Special Operations Command on this. And they have their own kind of like maritime kind of like program within that as well. But I mean, this kind of it's like the Office of Global Access again. This program isn't dedicated to USOs. A lot of the time they're dealing with Russians, Chinese, other adversaries under the water, but it's from time to time they will come across something of unknown origin as well. And what they do is they recover these crafts. And from my understanding, what happens is the Office of Naval Research they're the ones who actually do the that they handle the recovery of materials, and they ensure that they go to the contractors for analysis to ascertain where they came from, what they're capable of doing. So I mean, those are the details that I've got so far. And obviously, as well, if you look at the Office of Naval Research, you can see that it has facilities and offices dedicated globally, all over the world. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense from that perspective. If you are dealing with a global operation under the seas, it's good to have a footprint in all those places around the world.
All right. I mean, without getting too technical here, right? You've got a lot of 3-letter, 4-letter, 5-letter agencies here, right? A lot of acronyms, a lot of Special Operations Command, U.S. Naval, this, that, the other, CIA, the U.S. Navy, right? So let's just look at it more simply, right? What Christopher Sharp is saying is that there's several U.S. government agencies, right, and military operations working together, right, to recover crafts of unknown origin under the ocean, right? And then those craft are then sent to our defense contractors, i.e. Lockheed Martin and the like, where they are then analyzed to determine their origin and or their capabilities, right? I mean, this is fascinating for sure, right? An underwater program, I mean, it makes sense, right? Every medium that we would have a way to facilitate a recovery underwater, on top of a mountain, in the desert, in a city, right? Urban recoveries, and space or upper atmosphere. And that all these agencies would then tie in together. But I will admit, when you hear all these agencies and all these things working together, it definitely makes it seem like that's much harder to sort of cover up, if you will, right? With so many different agencies involved, but it must be compartmentalized, like a lot of things, when it comes to, defense, especially American defense. So they may be going to recover things, pick it up, send it out, and not know what they're doing or what they're a part of, right? Only few key participants may have, the full scope of everything, right? Like an actor in a movie who's just given lines for one scene and doesn't know the whole story, right? Only the director does of what's going on. Something like that, potentially, right? And it is interesting because once a craft is out of the water, I mean, it's just like any craft, no matter where you get it from, because apparently a lot of these craft are transmedium, meaning it doesn't matter if they're under the water, in space, on a mountain, like I said, in the desert here, that none of that matters. Once it's being studied, it is what it is. You wouldn't need a special place to analyze different, if it came from under the water or this, that, or the other, that wouldn't matter. But the recovery procedure would entail, different equipment, different personnel, a different strategy, if you will. And I would imagine underwater recoveries are the hardest, right? And maybe the ones they protect the most. So I don't know about y'all, but I find this fascinating. All right, so please tell me in the comments what you think about these underwater UFO recoveries. Let's jump to the next clip. This is journalist Matt Laszlo talking with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, again, on Weaponized, about the new hearings that are coming up, right? And specifically the one with Arrow. And specifically a brand new story that Askapol, Matt Laszlo, are going to be dropping. Check it out.
But what I'm also hearing is that you're saying somebody is empowered by this indifference, meaning that there's some sort of overlord that's taking advantage of being able to dismiss the UAP thing or try to contain it or even just to shape the emerging UAP narrative. So I'd like to ask you, I mean, do you have any idea? I know you said you're on the hunt, but do you have a suspicion of who is trying to influence the public's understanding of UAP behind the scenes? Who's in power? Do you have any idea?
Well, here's the crazy thing. You used overlord, which, yeah, could be what we find. It also could be an underlord, like someone who doesn't matter. Like, again, there is such indifference from these key principles on the intel committees. Like, look, we've got another exclusive at Askapol that we're going to drop with Senate Intel Chair Mark Warner, where I ask him, like, hey, did you hear about Gillibrand, that she's having a UAP hearing with, the new head of ARROW? He's like, no. Gillibrand sits on both Intel and Armed Services. She's running, she'll be chairing, she says she's chairing a November hearing in the Senate, public one with ARROW. She says she'll be chairing that from her Armed Services subcommittee that she chairs. But I'm like, how do you bifurcate this? Like, you're one of just 6 lawmakers in the Senate. You're one of just 6 U.S. senators who sits on both the Armed Services and the Senate Intel Committee. Well, Armed Services oversees America's, the military industrial complex and the troops, 2 separate things. And so that committee is so integral to the nation's intelligence that, for me as a novice, looking from the outside, I think those two would just be wet at the hip. But no, they're siloed.
Well, first of all, that's a great question by Jeremy there, right? And if you listen closely to Matt's answer, to me, the key point there is the answer no, right? Which Matt expands upon, right? Because when he asked Senator Mark Warner, right, an exclusive that's coming out with Askapol, he says he doesn't know about this UAP hearing with Gillibrand, right? And that's the point Matt's trying to make, right? Let me simplify it here, which he did a great job. But basically he's saying, how can these 2 people not know what each other are doing when there's only 6 of them, right? When there's such a few number and what they're doing is supposed to be joined together, essentially. Like, how do they not know about this hearing? Right? How does Mark Warner not know about this hearing? Which, by the way, it sounds like the ARROW hearing is coming in November. We had heard September. Clearly, that's passed. So now we know it's coming in November. Is it around Nancy Mace's one of November 13th? Representative Nancy Mace, the hearing on November 13th? I don't know. But the idea that it is siloed, it is compartmentalized, right? Or is Mark Warner, like, it's too early, like he'll find out about it, a few weeks before or something like that? I think that would be a good follow-up question for Matt as it gets closer to the hearing, to then ask and see if he knows. Maybe they don't, look at things till it gets closer, right? Maybe he's seen it but didn't recognize it in a paper or something, or was told and forgot, or that, who knows, right? At that point, I mean, just to be fair, just to consider all the possibilities here, we are over a month out. It's possible that, and we don't know what part of November, before the election, after the election, and all of that could change. But again, Gillibrand having a Senate hearing with the new head of ARROW, right, which is the Pentagon's Office to Study UFOs, and their new director. How would Mark Warner not know about this? I agree, that is strange. But again, I think as we get closer to the hearing, you re-ask that question and see where he's at. Oh, yeah, we're looking into, maybe I'll be a part of it. Will he be there? I don't know. It's possible they just find out about these things a week before, 2 weeks, so they're not just overthrown with all of this, different hearings or meetings or things they have going on. And again, it is an election year. And regardless if you're the one running for president or not, it just affects the entire political, landscape. It just does. So I don't know, but it is an interesting point that Matt brings up. And it's a great question that Jeremy asked as well. who is back there trying to suppress some of this, and what are the reasons, right? Is it just, well, the stigma of it, and why are we talking about UFOs, or is it more serious, right? Or is it a combination? I don't know. But I think and I'm sure Matt will take care of this, right? A good follow-up question as we just basically re-ask that same question as we get closer to the hearing. I think that will have more impact. If the hearing is just around the corner and he doesn't know what's going on, that would have more impact to me. Now, I can sort of understand maybe why he wouldn't. Again, I'm speculating. Matt is the expert. He's in Washington every day asking these questions. So, honestly, if he thinks it's a little odd, even now with that much time out, then maybe it is, right? I definitely will lean towards his expertise. So, anyway, a lot there. So we'll keep you posted. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please go check out the links in the description for the new episode of Weaponized, but also I've put links for Liberation Times, which Chris Sharp is a journalist for, as well as Ask a Poll with Matt Laszlo. So thank you to those gentlemen for all the work they do. And, of course, thank you to Jeremy and George for all the work they do as well. All right, guys, we'll see you on tomorrow's episode. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all. Peace!
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep.